So first I'm going to talk just in general about how TouchStone is organized and some of the functions here on the home screen. And then more specifically, we're going to get right into the 4 key functions and discuss how to use the 4 key functions, some strategy around how to build out your 4 key functions. So now we're logged in, and when you log in to your account, you'll go right to the home screen, which is where we are now. On the home screen, you're going to see the username that you're logged in as. It's always going to be in this welcome screen. So whatever username and password you've logged in with, you're going to see that name appear. You're also going to see your control panel and management review if you've gotten that set up. So the control panel is where you would go to use processes, to use your procedures that you've documented. So you can set up control panels for positions on your organization chart. And once you've got job descriptions built for those positions or a listing of processes that each position is accountable for, you can then go ahead and set up control panels, which gives you access to those processes or your employees, and then it's the place that you go to use the processes. If you're a manager, you'll see this section called Management Review if that's been set up, and here you'll be able to see and have access to the work that your employees are doing in TouchStone. There's going to be a lot more explanation about the control panel and management review as we get deeper into the sessions, and then the last session is always a session specifically about these 2 tools. These tools in general are for the using and the managing of processes. So once something's been documented, it's important to implement it and to manage it. Otherwise, it's just documents, right? The actual benefit that you get from the procedure is less if you don't implement it and also manage it. And manage it means make sure that people are using it. So, and innovate it when necessary. So that's what these 2 tools are about and more, but that in a nutshell is what they're for. Once you've got one process documented in TouchStone, and that's pretty easy to accomplish because you can go and pull things from the library and use them right away. Once you have one thing documented, it's time to implement and use it. I always get asked this question, when should I implement? Should I wait until all the processes on the job description are done and then implement it with the whole department or that person? Well, the answer is no. You should implement as you go. So employees get the experience of even just one documented procedure, a training on how it's used, follow-up on it. If you wait until you've got all of the procedures documented, first of all, that takes a while, and it's a lot for employees to absorb all at once. You're better off implementing as you go, because then you can start using as you go, and you slowly bring your employees into the idea that their work is about documented procedures, and you can do it one kind of piece at a time. Here in the upper right corner of your screen is account administration. So account administration is where you can set up users to your system and also assign control panels and also restrict user access. There's going to be a whole session on account administration here in another few weeks. This is very easy to use, so don't let it intimidate you. On our website, there's a 5-minute video which goes over the basics of account administration. So if you've been wanting to set up users and haven't known how to do it or don't understand the user access ID or how to restrict access, then go and watch that 5-minute video, and like right now you can start using it. If you don't see this button called account administration, all that means is you're not an administrator. So if you're an employee or a manager on the line and you haven't been set up as an administrator, which is pretty common, it's only a few kind of key people would be administrators because they then have access to everything in TouchStone and all the functionality. So if you don't see this button, don't stress. It's just because you're not an administrator. To the right of the account admin button is the search feature. So right here, when you select search, it takes you to the search tool. You can put in a partial or a whole word for what you're searching for. You can hit the drop down and choose specifically, if you know it's a work plan, you can choose work plans, but usually I just default to search all, and then I see everything with this word or partial word in it. It's organized by categories, so these are all the work plans that have management in it. These are all the processes that have management in it, checklists, scripts, uploaded forms. So when you find what it is that you're searching for, these are all hyperlinked, so you can just select it, and it'll take you right to that work plan in this example. So use the search if you can't find something. If you want to just check that you're not about to create something that already exists, use the search. In Chrome, I think it is, and also maybe in Firefox, there's a button in the browser where when you're on a specific tool, like if I was here on a process and I wanted to search inside of the work plan, say, for a specific word, you can hit the little search option and type in that word, and it will highlight everywhere where that word is. So there's some browser things that are available to you around searching, but overall, search in TouchStone, use the search tool. To the right of the search tool is our user manual. So this is just a quick help index that kind of goes through all the different parts of TouchStone, and if you've got a specific question or you just want to see, you forgot how to do something, you can go and pick on that subject area and it'll show you and kind of give you some an explanation on what that tool's about or how to use it. To the right of the user manual is the user settings. So especially if you're not an administrator, this is where you can go to see what your username is, and also you can set or reset your password. These passwords are encrypted in our system. We can never see what they are. Even in our admin center, we don't see what they are. We just see an encryption. We can always reset passwords from our admin center, but we can't tell you what your password is because it's all encrypted. Also, if you look at the password in user settings or also in account administration, you can see passwords. If I select any user on the list here, if I scroll down to the bottom here, here's the password. The password may or may not be this number of characters associated with the dots. So again, it encrypts it. It makes more dots than there are characters. So don't let that confuse you. If you want to change the password, just delete the current password and reset it and hit update. And then again, also here in user settings, if you're not an administrator, you can go here and do it. To the right, the last icon in the row here, to the right of user settings is the logout button. So TouchStone will remain active on a computer for 5 hours with no activity. So if you log into TouchStone in the morning and you're using it in the morning and then you don't touch it until you leave that day, for 5 hours it's going to stay active on your desktop. In other words, you won't have to log in and log out. It'll be open just like software would be open. After 5 hours, it times out, so it will shut itself down. It's always a good idea to save everything that you're doing in TouchStone as you go. Saving is almost everything in TouchStone auto-saves the minute you hit update or save. Only here on the Process Tools page, if I'm in this process, and I open up a work plan, and all of this is saved automatically, but if I go and open up this task here, and I leave it open, and I walk away and go to lunch, and I forget about it and go home for the day, and I've done work here and not saved it, TouchStone's going to time out in 5 hours, and then you're going to lose that task. So anytime you have something open, always save it. And TouchStone makes you save it, because if I try to toggle away to something else, I'm always going to get this message saying, hey, you've got to save, cancel, or delete the task you're on before you can move on. But where it does kind of not save is if you let TouchStone time out after 5 hours and you haven't saved what you've done. Other than that, it's going to force you to save before you can move on and do anything else. So remember to log out. Remember to log out for that reason, because to make sure that you've saved. And also, if you leave TouchStone open on your computer, potentially somebody, if it is within the 5 hours, could come and get into your account. I don't know if that's a concern. It might be for some people, but if that is a concern, then make sure you log out. All right. So over here to the left of the TouchStone screen, we have these 4 tabs. This first tab will always get you back to the home screen, which is where we are now. The next tab over, the 4 key functions, will take you to the 4 key functions, which we're going to go to in a minute. To the right of that is the organization chart, which is a picture of all the positions in the company. And then to the right of that is the reports tab. So the reports tab allows you to run reports of control panel and management review information. So this is related to the control panel here on the home screen as well as the management section. So I can run a report of everything that I completed in my control panel for that day or that week or that month. Or I could run a report of one of my employees' work. So I could call up Mary on the report screen and I could say, you know, give me all the checklists she did today. And I could see a report of that. I can always see that information by going into the control panel or going into the management review and viewing it one at a time, or you can run these global reports. The 4 key functions is the place where a master list of all the processes is kept. So that's what's going on here. There's a master list of all the processes that have been created or listed out in TouchStone. The organization chart is a picture of all the positions, all the people. So this is a list of processes by subject area, and this is an actual listing of all the people. How these two tools come together is we link the processes from here, from the 4 functions list, to boxes on the organization chart. So basically we assign accountability for all the processes here to these boxes on the organization chart, which create what we call the job description. So that's how these two tools are married together. All of these processes you see here on these job descriptions are in the 4 functions list in one place or another. I've just taken everything from my master list here and assigned it to one position or another on the org chart. Okay, so let's talk specifically about the 4 key functions. So this is, again, a master list of all the processes in the entire business. And these lists are best when you think about them in a subject area, so by category. So there are 4 key functions which give you a picture of the business as a whole. Guiding the business is for your strategic, managerial, higher level guiding processes for the business. Getting the business is for all of your marketing strategy, advertising, sales, all the methods and ways that you get new business in the door. Doing the business is your operations or your service delivery. So once something's been sold here, it needs to be delivered here. So these are all the processes for how you do the work to then satisfy your customers. Running is in admin, finance, HR, IT. It's the inner runnings of the business. It's all the support processes. So this whole function supports all of these other functions overall. It's kind of like the overhead of the business. When you select one of the 4 functions, it takes you to further sub-functions. So we've got 4 key functions above. We drill down into one of the functions and we see sub-functions or sub-areas. These are these black headers here. So these are categories of work within getting the business. I know I'm in getting the business because I can always see it right up here, getting the business. And then I can toggle back and forth to the other 3 right here in these boxes. Or I can always go back to the 4 key functions tab and see them here. So the sub-functions help organize the processes, the lists of processes. So these are the categories. So TouchStone works like an outline. There's the uppermost 4 functions, you drill down to sub-functions, and then ultimately you see the processes, or you list the processes inside of each of those sub-functions. If you don't like the getting, doing, guiding, running terminology, like it confuses you or it doesn't make sense, you don't like it, if you hit this edit pencil here, then you can change it. So I could just call this marketing and sales if I wanted to. So whatever you want the function title to be, you just retype it. I'll choose that, and then you hit save. So now I've just edited this function title. I can see it right here. Or if I go back to the 4 key functions, I can see it here. So feel free to edit these function titles, make them your own, make it feel comfortable to you. If they're confusing, that's a good reason to change it. If you feel like, well, what is doing again? Well, what is running? I don't really remember. Then go ahead and change it and make it something, turn it into something that makes sense to you. What I would say, though, is try to stick with the general themes of these four. Because if I was to make this sales and this advertising, well, then I'm going to run out of functions. So try to keep the four general themes. The sub-functions are all controlled by this icon right up here where it says sub-functions. So if I want to add a sub-function, which again is a category of work within that function, it's a way to organize the processes into more succinct groups, I would hit Add Function, then I'd put in the name of my function, and then I hit Save. The functions toggle back and forth from left to right. So you'll see my new function is down here. So think of the categories of work within each of your functions and try to define what those categories are. In 3 of the 4 key functions, guiding, getting, and running, there are some pretty common sub-functions that I see from industry to industry. In other words, most businesses would have these sub-functions. So in guiding the business, they're typically strategy or strategic processes, sometimes training, employee management, so all the processes to manage employees overall, and board of directors. So these are all the processes for what the board needs to do to function. So these 4 are typical. Sometimes there's not a training sub-function and it's just these 3. But generally you're going to need some functions like this, these 3. Inside of getting the business, the common ones are marketing strategy, so all the strategic processes for how you decide how you're going to market. Advertising, or lead generation it's called sometimes, so all the processes for how to generate leads. Sales, or lead conversion, all your processes once you have a qualified lead, how do you convert that lead? Sales management, so specifically how the sales department is managed. Employee management overall, like performance review, one-on-one meetings, things like that are all going to be in guiding. But things that are just specific to the sales department could be here. If you do estimates and you consider that, or bidding and you consider that a sales process, there might be a sub-function for that. So generally, marketing strategy, advertising, sales, some kind of sub-functions like that. If you sell and deliver multiple products and services, you may have like a advertising-commercial sales function or sub-function, and then processes for how you sell to commercial clients or how you advertise to commercial clients. And then you could have one advertising residential. So you could break it up into more succinct categories if you do sell to different types of services, and the processes you use to sell to those different types of customers are different. Here in running the business, some common sub-functions are human resources. Unless you don't have employees, then you need human resource processes. Even if you deal with subcontractors, some kind of subcontractor human resource type processes I think are useful and necessary, even if it's just like your subcontractor agreements. Finance or bookkeeping. So these are all the procedures for the basic finance functions: accounts payable, receivable, deposits, purchasing. Financial management. This is kind of like a higher level financial activities: cash flow, budgeting, things like that. Admin. That's another typical sub-function in running the business. So all of the administrative support processes, how the office is organized, how to answer the phone. IT, so your computer processes. Here in doing the business, the sub-functions really get specific based on your industry, based on what it is that you're delivering. So if you're a production company, you may have a production sub-function, manufacturing. If you're a service delivery, you could have service. You could have multiple sub-functions for the different types of services if the processes are different. Customer satisfaction or client service is another more boilerplate sub-function inside of doing. Things like customer complaints, customer appreciation, everything around making sure your customers are satisfied. If you deal with materials at all, you have a warehouse or equipment, some kind of a material and equipment sub-function or material control, or a warehouse sub-function with all the warehouse procedures. If you are a service business, sometimes material development or product development is a sub-function that you would have, so how you improve your service functions. Service delivery. So think about what your industry is and then create these sub-functions to help organize the processes within the function. So again, here under the sub-functions tab, I can add sub-functions. I can edit sub-functions that already exist. So if I choose this edit function, I hit the drop-down of the function I want to edit, and I retype the name into the to field and hit save, and then it will just change this title. I can delete a sub-function. TouchStone's only going to let you delete sub-functions that don't have processes in them. So if I try to delete one of these, I'm in an error message saying you can't delete this because it's got processes in it. So if you do want to delete a sub-function or combine two together, then you need to take the processes from one and move it to the other, which is super easy. I just drag it. I drag all of these from this function to this one. Once this one's empty, then I can delete it. You can also reorder the sub-functions. So if I hit reorder here, I'm going to see them in order. They toggle from left to right. So if I want this one to be at the top, I just move it to the top, and this is going to be next to it, and then these will be the next two, and this will be the last one. Then I hit save. So the sub-functions are to organize your processes. That's it. They help you find things easier. They help you think of categories of work and then list those. They also help when you start to create your lists of processes, because I can sit here and say, okay, I'm in doing the business. This is delivering our products or services. I know I need customer satisfaction processes. I know I need those. So what are they? And you can start to think, what do we need to make sure customers are satisfied, and then start to list your processes. And then you think to yourself, okay, I know we have material that we need to deal with. What are the material control processes? And then you start to list those. If you just think of what do I need for doing the business, then sometimes it gets so overwhelming you don't know where to start, because you're thinking of workflow in your head, and then you're trying to think, well, who does what, and it's more difficult to do it that way. So prepare your outline, so prepare your sub-functions, and then start listing processes within them. So to add a process, it's super easy. You just go here where it says Add New Process. You put in the name. Then you hit Save. If you get this message, this is letting you know that you're about to put in a duplicate title. So I've got another process somewhere in my account, somewhere on my 4 functions list that's called name already. If I wanted to see it, I just select this and it shows me right where it is. So TouchStone's going to stop you from creating duplicate processes. We don't want you to have duplicates, because then you've got the same thing twice and it needs to be updated twice. So anytime you see this error message, always think, go and see what the other process is. Make sure you are about to create a duplicate, or if you're actually thinking of something different, and then change the name. Then I hit Save, and then TouchStone adds the title. Another way to get processes into your account is to go look at our library. So the libraries help you with some ideas on processes, ways to get going on a process, examples of what a documented process looks like. There's a general process library that is general for all industries and all companies. Then we have 2 industry specifics. If you're a construction company or an insurance company, always start with the general library first and pull down what you want from that, and then go look in the other industry specific libraries. So if I hit the general library, now I'm seeing a list of example processes related to doing the business. So these are processes related to delivering products or services, what happens in operations. This library is, it probably has, it has some good stuff in it, but a lot of times I think you might look at this library and say, well, this isn't really related to what I do. And it's partly because every industry is different in doing the business, and the work that you do is different. So we've tried to build some general things, a lot of things related to customer service that could be helpful. Each function has its own library, though. So if I was to go back to getting the business here, and I go add from process library, now I'm seeing processes related to getting the business, marketing strategy, advertising, sales, which these processes tend to be more generic, they tend to be more general. No matter what industry you're in, most of the time, 99% of the time, you're selling something. Even if you're selling through distributors, you're still selling. So this library tends to be helpful to all industries because it's general things related to how to do marketing strategy, how to sell, different types of selling processes, and then advertising, which a lot of businesses advertise in the same way, especially over the internet. So you'll find a lot of useful things in this library. Inside of guiding the business, this library is also incredibly useful to all industries and businesses. So here if I go general and guiding, these are things related to how to manage employees, processes for managing employees, business strategy processes, board of directors processes. Even if you don't have a board of directors, the idea of your board, even if it's just you and one other person, meeting to discuss the future of the company, where your business is going, how to increase the value of it, is a useful activity. So this, in the library, these processes are grayed out right here because they're already in my demo account, which we're looking at now. So anytime you take a process from the library, it's going to put it into your account, but then it grays it out so you can't go and pull a duplicate process by accident. The ones that are blue aren't in my account yet, and if I hover over them, I can see the objective of this process. So I can see what's in it, what it's about. If I want this process, I just select the box next to it, and then I tell TouchStone which box to put it in, which sub-function to put it in, and then I hit Save. Then it pulls the process from the library and adds it to your account. So go into the libraries, kind of see the processes that are interesting to you, pull them over into your account. Check back in the libraries periodically because we add new things to the library processes. If you pull a library process over and you look at it and you kind of decide, this isn't really what I thought it was, this isn't something that I need or want. If you go to it, delete what's inside of it. So here's a work plan here. And if I hit this black X, I delete it. Now this process title is going to be red on the 4 functions list because there's nothing in it. And now I can delete it by taking it and dragging it to the delete folder. So anything you pull from the library you decide you don't want right away, let's say it's not something that you're going to implement in the next 6 months to a year. It looked interesting to you, but it's not something you're really committed to doing now. Then I'd say delete it. When you delete it from your TouchStone account, it puts it back into the library. So you can go back to the library and get it again later. The last thing you want to do is go and just download everything from the library, just go crazy with all the processes, and get all excited about them, and then have them all sitting there just cluttering things up and making it more confusing. So as you pull processes over, look at the content, decide if this is something that you're going to edit and kind of implement and use in the next 6 months to a year. If the answer is yes, then keep it. If the answer is no, then just delete it for now and know that you can go back and get it later. All right, so the first step is defining your sub-functions, and then the second step is to list out your processes. So either by going here and creating the process title and listing it, or going to the library and pulling down what you want from the library. This is a brainstorming. It's a creative process to list out your 4 functions list. I see some accounts where people have gone in and just built out a couple process titles and maybe documented those and are using them, and then maybe went over here and did a few, but they never really spent the time to fully list out all their processes in the 4 functions list. I feel like this is a really beneficial exercise for every business, to go in and create this master list of processes. It really truly doesn't take that much time if you look at it in the grand scheme of things. What I've found in holding people's hands through this process and also getting feedback on what they've done on their own, it takes anywhere from maybe 5 to 10 hours, depending on the size of your company, to list out all the processes. It's a beneficial experience because for some of you, you're starting to look at your business in a different way. You're starting to think about it in terms of being based on procedure and process. Up until this point, for some of you, the business is a chaotic mess of people doing things or not doing things. You hire people, they're meant to do something, they don't end up doing that, you try to manage them, and it becomes this quagmire of people and personalities. And all you feel is, I need more help, so I hire more people. And you are creating a people-dependent, unprofitable situation in most cases. So this idea of creating a master list of what are all the processes that are necessary in this business, using that list to think about your future goals and decide what are we going to need to do 6 months from now if we're going to grow the business by 50%. Not waiting until it starts to grow, but really growing it. You can start to think about the categories of work. What needs to happen here in getting the business in terms of generating leads and your ability to convert those leads for you then to be able to grow the business and deliver more. So you can start to see it in more of a scientific way rather than just what's happening to you. You can think about, as in guiding the business, if you do have a goal of growing the business to $10 million, what's going to be necessary, what processes will be necessary for you to implement in advertising and in sales to do that. And then once all those new sales are coming in, what kind of processes are you going to need in doing the business to ensure that your employees are trained and ready to go to deliver those additional services? Who are you going to need to hire over here, and how are you going to make sure you recruit and hire them in the best way? What are the documented processes you need for that? So again, doing the 4 functions list in its entirety, listing out all the processes, can be a wonderful strategic exercise, as well as a very practical exercise because it's helping you set up TouchStone and it's helping you get your processes organized in a way that allows you to be successful with them. So to list out the processes, there's some different techniques that I've used that I think are good. One, you can sit with, if you have a large enough company, you can sit with each department with the manager, obviously, because the managers always need to be involved, and then maybe 1 or 2 key employees within that department. You can have TouchStone open or even project it out on a screen and say, okay, what processes, salespeople, do we need in getting the business? What kind of marketing strategy things do we need to be doing? What are all the advertising processes we currently do, and what are we going to need to do in the next 6 months in order to grow the company? What is our sales process? What are we going to call that? Do we have follow-up processes? Do we need a lead qualification process? Do we need a daily sales to-do checklist to make sure the employees are doing their work? What kind of sales management processes do we need? What are the reports that we run? What are we going to need to run? So you do a brainstorming session and you start to list out all the processes. Then you go to the next department and do the same thing. So it's about getting the employees involved, getting your managers involved, and helping them, having them assist in documenting the processes. Another method you can use is you can send out an email to key people, or everyone if you want, and say, give me a list of everything that you do. So track your activities for the next 2 weeks and submit a list of all the processes or all the work that you do. You can then take those lists and determine process titles from them. There's a tool in the library. It's called Process List Development. It's right here, but you can pull it from your Guiding the Business library. And it's got a couple work plans explaining what I just said. And then it's got these uploaded files, which are called activity trackers. And so you can email out these activity trackers to people. And this is an example of one filled out. So they're listing out their activities for the week, everything they do every couple hours. And then what is the system name or the process name that this is associated with? This is a little trickier, but it is kind of getting your employees to start to think about, what is the process I'm in now? What am I doing? A lot of times employees are all over the place, like they're multitasking and things, everywhere. So you say, what processes are you accountable for? And all they're thinking of is all the tasks that they do. So this TouchStone is going to help with that enormously, but this simple exercise helps with it too. So they're just listing out the activities, and then they're saying, okay, what process is this a part of? And then potentially you can take these process titles here and add them to your 4 functions list. So these are the processes that you need. You can delegate this out to every department. So even if you don't want to be involved in every single listing of every function, you can have the department manager be in charge of that. So come up with a list of processes. Couple techniques for listing process titles. You'll notice in my process titles here, they're very short and specific. So this isn't a paragraph, this isn't a sentence or a phrase even. It's a short title. So think about the processes in short titles. Accounts payable, accounts receivable, job costing, contracts. 1, 2, 3 words at the most. Think about how you're going to list the titles. So I would recommend, every word capitalized, like this is. If you do it all lowercase, if you like that for whatever reason, fine. But that means that everybody who enters process titles, they should all be lowercase. So you want to kind of make that a rule about your TouchStone account. What you don't want is different people coming in and some putting capitals and some not, and then suddenly the titles kind of just all look different. So think about short, specific titles. Each process, and we're going to get into this a little more when we talk about the process tools page, but inside of every process, you have different tools available to document with. So here's a work plan on depositing checks. There can be numerous work plans within a process. So here I could have this is the deposits process, how to make bank deposits. That's what it's defined as. And I can have a work plan for how to deposit checks. I could have a work plan for how to make merchant account deposits. I could have a work plan for how to do EFT deposits. So everything related to making deposits is inside of this work plan. Let me show you another example. There's a process called communications. This comes from the library. So here in the communications process, there are numerous work plans. How to answer the phone, how to send out emails, how to deal with faxes in the fax machine, what to do with incoming and outgoing mail. So everything related to how you communicate in the business is inside of this process. If I made process titles and I had a how to answer the phone process, then I had a how to email process, and then I had a how to run the fax machine process, incoming and outgoing mail process. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it just creates a lot more processes on your 4 functions list, right? Instead of there being one called communications, I could potentially have 4 or 5. So it's better to combine results. So combine the processes so that you have numerous work plans inside of it. Let me pull another example. Here's a recruiting process. So everything related to recruiting is inside of this process. How to do a hiring seminar, how to fill out recruiting sheets, how to place ads. Here's scripts for placing ads. Here's how to assess a person's resume. So everything related to recruiting is inside of this process. Again, you could have 5 different processes for recruiting if you so choose, but it's just going to make your 4 functions list longer. And I find The more processes that are on the 4 functions list, you want to have what's necessary, but if you have an overabundance, it just becomes more overwhelming and confusing. You've got so much more to deal with. It's better to have it combined into one process and multiple work plans. Accounts payable, here's another example. So this is accounts payable, everything related to paying bills on time. So here I've got how to create invoices, how to create special invoices, how to pay things on a credit card or ACH payments, how to make check payments. So think about this idea of process titles and then what's inside of every process. Sometimes it's useful when you're doing your 4 functions list, if you go add new process, put in the title of the process, add it to TouchStone in the right function. Let's put it here for now. Go to that process, then define it first of all, right here where it says objective. This is the purpose of the process. So we're defining it here quickly. I can't spell today. And then think about what if there's going to be multiple work plans. So is there more than one workflow, more than one thing that happens? Are there different categories of things that happen within this process? Are there different parts of the process? And then put it in the work plans. So we're not documenting anything right away. We're just kind of brainstorming how it's going to be organized. So if you can think about it that specifically, think of the title, go and define it, and then put in the different work plans if they exist. Sometimes there's just one work plan and that's fine, but if there are multiple work plans, then put them in. This is going to help then make sure that you're combining like results. If you have different departments working on this and somebody has been working in the finance area and they've listed out processes that you think should be combined, you can always combine them later. I can even take work plans out of a process or files or whatever that's inside of it, and using this tool here, I can move it out of this process into another. So it's easy to kind of combine things if you look through and notice that that they shouldn't be combined or that the titles aren't right. Let's talk about this toolbar row here for a second. So if you haven't noticed already, there is a color coding to the 4 functions list. Red means that there's nothing inside of the process yet. So if I select on a red title, there's nothing in here. There's no documentation for this process. The minute I put a work plan in, or any tool, and save it, now I'm starting to document this process. So I've created a work plan. I can start to add so it's begun. It's in process. So TouchStone's going to automatically turn that title blue. So blue, and here on the legend you can see, means there's something inside of it, even if it's just one work plan. Somebody has started the documentation of that process. When you're finished with a process, so it's been fully documented, it's been vetted by the manager or whoever's responsible for that, you can then fill in this box, process documentation completed, and then TouchStone will turn the title black. Once you've turned something black, you can select it and uncheck it if you decided it's not done and you want to work on it again. So this isn't fixed. This is controlled by you. So you can turn it black whenever you want, and you can uncheck it to turn it blue again. So that's the color coding. It lets you know, is there something in the process? If it's red, there's not. If it's blue, there is. And then when you're finished with it, you can turn it black. Putting something in the public folder, like you're seeing here, takes that process and puts it in this folder here on the home screen. So we're going to talk more about this as we get into the training sessions further. But here on the home screen, public processes are processes that are available to everyone. So by definition, they are public. They're the accountability of every employee in the company. It's the kind of information that all employees need to have and use. So if there is a process like that, and again, it's not the accountability of one or two or even a whole department of people, it's everyone. Then you can put it into the public folder just by selecting the process And again, going here and filling this box in. Make process public and available to all users. So then it will put that process on the home screen. So that's brief about what public is now, but just to give you an idea. Sometimes I've been into accounts and I've seen people have every process in the public folder. So if you've done that, then rethink it and move things out of the public folder that aren't really public. So generally, a lot of human resources things would be public, like the employee handbook, safety, vacation request, training processes that are company-wide. Communications is one, how to answer the phone, email, fax, things that are company-wide information. This icon that looks like an arrow pointing to the right, this is our export features. So you're going to see this icon all throughout TouchStone. This allows you to print what's on the screen, export it to Word, export it to a PDF, or email it. So you're going to see this icon again all throughout TouchStone. Everything in TouchStone you can print directly to your printer or to Word, to a PDF, or email. Now, having said that, the minute you export something from TouchStone, it then creates an additional copy of that. So it's like a multiple version. It's a second version. It's what happens on our networks all the time when people access documents and they go file save as, and suddenly, they plop it on their desktop, and now there's multiple versions of the same file out, and nobody knows what the most current version is. Then people start printing things, and then you've got reams of paper of printed things, and you're making notes on it, and now what do you do with it then? Like, what is the real version of what's going on? So one of the key benefits of TouchStone is that it's a paperless environment, first of all. And secondly, everything in TouchStone is the most current version. You can't have duplicate copies of it. We on purpose make it so you don't. So ideally, everything in TouchStone is the most current version, and it's up to date at all times. And adopting TouchStone and a lot of other paperless systems that are now, more and more popular, is hugely beneficial because you do have the most current versions of things, and you are getting rid of paper, and you are stopping cluttering up email systems with tons of copies of attachments and things that get lost and misplaced or overwhelm people. So think about implementing TouchStone in this way. So as an example, if I was the sales manager or the finance manager and I was working on the 4 functions list and I wanted to show it to the president and say, hey, take a look at what I've done in TouchStone so far, rather than exporting it and printing it and putting it in their inbox or emailing it to them, I would just say, hey, go to TouchStone and look and see what I've done in running the business. You can even go up here to the address bar and go right-click copy. I could send him a quick email, paste the link in, and say, open up TouchStone and click this link, and it would take them right to the page. Or, I'm in the accounts payable process. I've been working on the special invoices work plan. Go take a look at it and let me know what you think. Again, I can copy this URL. I email it to my manager and say, hey, go take a look. So, think about that idea as instead of exporting. So I want to, in the last few minutes here, I want to highlight a system from our library, which I think is a good process to start to consider when you're working on your 4 functions list. Or even if you've already done your 4 functions list, it's a good process to consider. It's called strategic planning right here. And you can go to our library inside of Getting the Business and pull it down from the library. So when you go to the process, inside of it there's going to be some work plans, these exact work plans, and some other tools within it. You can start with the very first work plan and kind of read through it, and it lets you know what the process is about. So this is an implementable, if that's a word, strategic planning process. This isn't about creating a vision or even creating a strategic plan. I mean, it gets that result, but it's different than that. It's an active process. It's a process on turning goals into specific actionable items. So this is what TouchStone is about. It's about identifying a process that needs to get a result and then defining the steps to get that result. Training the employees to follow those steps which get that result. Managing the employees to those steps which allows them to get the result. So it's different from just saying we need this or go do that or let me show you how this is done or man, we really need more leads. Let's get on the internet and start, doing pay-per-click ads. It's really more about taking ownership of that particular result that you want to achieve and documenting how it happens. So we've taken this concept, which is what makes documented procedures so fantastic, and developed a strategic planning process that helps managers and entrepreneurs think about the big picture and then leads them all the way to delivering the results or taking the steps necessary to accomplish those goals. So this very first work plan is called the meeting rhythm, and it kind of lays out how you go from a big picture goal and drill it all the way down to actionable steps. So there are different meetings that are recommended. Annual meetings, which is annually for 2 full days. Quarterly meeting, which is, so you have the annual meeting, then you have a quarterly meeting, which is 1 full day. Then you do a monthly half-day meeting. Then there's an hour weekly meeting. And then sometimes there's 5 to 10 minute daily huddles. So we're looking at big results in the annual 2-day meeting. So in the 2-day meeting, you're coming up with what are the goals for the year? What do we want to achieve this year? What's going to happen this year? And you're thinking big picture results. Then you take those big picture results and you break them into quarterly goals. And in the quarterly meeting, which is 1 full day, you're deciding what are the deliverables, what is going to happen in this quarter. So if we want to grow, one of our annual goals is to grow the business, by 20%. In the first quarter, we know we need to generate X number of more leads, and we need to improve our training processes in operations so that the employees are trained when the new sales come in, say. So in the quarterly meeting, you're thinking about what needs to happen in the quarter to then fulfill on that piece of the annual goal. Then in the monthly meeting, you're looking at those quarterly results and you're thinking what needs to happen every month. So here again, we're taking big picture ideas, drilling it down into the quarter, and then drilling it down into the month. So here in the monthly planning, we're getting like really tactical at this point. You're thinking specifically, the big picture is grow sales, the quarterly plan is to improve advertising. Now monthly, we're going to implement new advertising processes. Then weekly is what's happening that week. So if I'm in charge of implementing a new pay-per-click campaign, which is a way that we're going to generate more leads, my goal for the month would be to implement that pay-per-click campaign, track the results, and come back in the weekly meeting with what the results are. Sometimes these equate to what we call key performance indicators. So if my key performance indicator for advertising is that I need to generate 20% more qualified leads, or from $500 spent in a pay-per-click ad, I need to generate 5 leads from that, which are $100 a lead. If that makes sense for the key performance indicators, then I will report on that. So here in the weekly and also in the monthly, we're talking about a documented process. So someone needs to document the process for how to create and manage a pay-per-click advertising campaign. So that goes back to TouchStone, right? That goes back to a list of the 4 functions. So they need to list out that process, pay-per-click advertising, build a work plan on how to create the ad, and then maybe a second work plan on how to evaluate the success of the ad. And then there's maybe something on Google Analytics on how to create the reports to then submit and show in the weekly meeting. These daily huddles are kind of nice, especially within larger companies. So like at the beginning of the day, we stand together and say, in this strategic, what are the strategic goals for today? And I would say, yeah, I'm on track with the pay-per-click campaign for the week. I'm going to report on it in the weekly meeting. Today I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So this shows you kind of the funnel of how to go from big picture down to tactical results. There's another work plan here on how to create agendas for each of these meetings. So here's the quarterly. This is a whole agenda for how to come up with, how do you spend the 2 days to come up with your strategic plan for the year and the quarter. Down here, here's an agenda for the monthly and weekly meetings. What to think about. It's always great to start with a positive focus. I really did, I did this, and this result with the pay-per-click, and this is what my challenges are. Adjusting and tracking. So this is a work plan on that. How to, because not everyone's on track all the time. So if your weekly meeting breaks down, do you then just throw it all out the window? No, you get back to the process. There's a video here to kind of watch on the whole process if you're interested in kind of seeing a bigger picture result of it. And there are forms down here which are useful for this whole process. So up here where we talked about the rhythm, here's an outline. These are the annual priorities. So this equates directly to the annual meeting, where it's that 2-day meeting where you're sitting and thinking, what is the strategic plan for this year? So it's a way with all of the flowery language and all the subjective things. This is like, what are our top 5 annual priorities this year? What are our top 4? Don't go more than 5. 5's a lot. So think about even 3. What are the top 3 things that we want to do this year? And list them out. List them here specifically, and then do a little description. In order to achieve these top 3 annual priorities, what are our quarterly priorities? What are we going to need to do each quarter? So this form kind of helps you kind of break it down and make these specific lists. Here's like an example of one. So like 2015 annual priorities: better customer service, increase sales. What are the quarterly goals? To increase customer service, these are the things that we need to do. And then you break it down into weekly. You can even go and do this in the control panel, which is what I was talking about in the beginning, where you're using the tools. So here under the President's Control Panel, I can go to Strategic Planning, and then I can call up this strategic plan and fill it out and save it back to TouchStone. Someone's asking about the activity tracker. So let me go back there. So let me show you that activity tracker real quick, and then I'm just going to end with a few more thoughts on strategic planning. So the activity tracker is in the Guiding the Business function. So when you select that and you go Add from Process Library, go to the General Library, and it's here on the list. So it's under the P section, Process List Development. So this is grayed out because it's already in my account, but you'll see it in yours. You fill in the side here, hit Save, and then it'll be in your system. And inside of it, you can click on the uploaded file, which is called Activity Tracker. So there's a blank one right here, and then there's a sample. So think about this strategic planning process. We've been doing this for years. I'm part of the team that goes on the 2-day annual, the annual 2-day strategic planning. We literally do everything that's listed here and get great results from it. This is strategic activity. This is like taking, your real goals for the business and making it building it out in a way that you can really follow and use. It gets the departments involved. It gets the employees involved. Even in larger companies, these quarterly plans or even the monthly plans can get delegated down to employees. And it can be described to them that our overall purpose is to improve customer satisfaction ratings by 20%. And these are the things that we're doing because of that. Here's the process for it. Let's implement and use it.